Hey there, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here with the Healthy Parenting Connector, where we strive to connect parents who really want to raise healthy kids with the experts who have the information they need. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Julie Lythcott-Haims, author of How to Raise an Adult, and she's going to tell us to chill out a little bit, perhaps. Thanks for being here, Julie.
Katie, thanks for having me.
This is going to be great, you guys. If you have not been one of the 4 million parents who are probably feeling a little sheepish after watching Julie's acclaimed TED Talk, you might not be super familiar with her, but I'm telling you, when people start following her advice, kids everywhere are going to get more sleep. They're going to learn how to play. They're going to stop seeing their worth in grades and college applications and checklists to complete. I loved reading her book, every single word of How to Raise an Adult, and I'm really excited to talk to her today about her mission to explore why humans need agency to make their way forward and what's impeding us, or rather them, our kids. I have to admit I'm a little nervous though, because I'm a 1980 birth, which statistically puts me in the millennials, and Julie kind of thinks that we have been overparented. So maybe you can give me a checklist for the interview, Julie. Can you help me?
That's funny, Katie. I love millennials. I think too many millennials were raised by helicopter parents. So if there are millennials who are feeling that they lack agency or don't know how to #adult, I don't blame millennials. I blame their parents. I blame myself because I've been overparenting my own kids, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
We will. So, Julie, in your years as a freshman dean at Stanford, what did you start to see on that college campus that first kind of alerted you to the change in parents and parenting?
Yeah, sometimes people ask me, what was the craziest thing you saw? And my response is, it wasn't the craziest stuff that worried me. It was the stuff that was becoming run-of-the-mill. Basically, on my campus, I was seeing what people were seeing all over America. This was not a Stanford thing by any means. This was happening everywhere. I was seeing parents showing up and trying to behave for the student. So I was hearing from parents who wanted to register their student for class. I was hearing from parents who were unhappy with a grade in the chemistry class and wanted to talk to the professor. I was hearing from parents who wanted to get involved in a run-of-the-mill roommate dispute. And these are 3 examples of basic tasks you'd expect a college student to be able to handle for themselves, or to at least want to try to handle for themselves. Not saying all of these things are going to go perfectly for that student the first time they try, but how does a student get more skilled at registering, working out conflicts with other humans, and asking questions from authority figures? They have to learn by doing. They have to practice having those interactions. They have to practice interacting with that bureaucracy in order to one day be really good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm pleased to say that my hair stood on end hearing those examples. So I hope that means like I'm not in the overparenting category. I think my mom did an awesome job.
Good for you.
So your book, yeah, good for her. Your book, How to Raise an Adult, New York Times bestseller. It's been called an anti-helicopter parenting manifesto, and you've already thrown out that word, helicopter parenting. So why is this so bad for we human beings being raised by helicopter parents?
Okay. Why is helicopter parenting so bad? Let me first tell you what it is.
Version, not the hour version.
Okay. All right. Well, but to get to what it is, because we use these funny terms, helicopter parent, snowplow parent, lawnmower parent, drone parent, tiger parent. There are 3 behaviors that fall under this umbrella. Mm-hmm. Overprotective, fiercely directive, meaning you have to tell your kid what to be and do with their life, and the concierge, which is the handler or the helper. And we do these things because we love our kids fiercely, because we're afraid of everything they might encounter in the world, and because our own egos need for us to have the right outcomes with our children. So our children have effectively become our pet. We're trying to make them best in breed at the dog show, or they're our trophy evidence of our great parenting. And so this is our ego saying, I need to know if I'm a good enough person. I need to know if I'm a good enough parent today. And I can demonstrate that by showing you what I have achieved for my kid. So all of this sort of seems lovingly intended and logical, and yet, I forgot to say, it also has a short-term benefit. When we overhelp, when we're overprotective, or we're fiercely directive, or we hold their hands too long, often we achieve something for them. We prevent them from skinning their knee or from having a hurt feeling. We save them from getting a 0 on their homework because we always drive it to school. Mm-hmm. When we argue with authority figures, we might get a regrade on a test or get a better position for our kid on the soccer team.
Feels good.
So
Yeah.
it looks like it works. Here's the point. In the long term, it deprives kids, because we're doing things for them that they must start to do for themselves. We're depriving them of developing agency, or its sort of sister concept, self-efficacy, which is that psychological sense that we all must have to be healthy and well humans, that, hey, I know that when I act, I can make things happen. When I make an action, there's an outcome. Okay. Our brains need to see the causation between our own actions and results. And this isn't about self-esteem, like, woohoo, I got an amazing result. It's like, there is a direct correlation between my action and some outcome. That's how we know of our own existence. And people who don't have agency have higher rates of anxiety and depression. So we are directly contributing to these really poor mental health rates that children and young adults across this country are experiencing. It's not the only cause, but it is correlated with those things. So that's why we have to stop. We're harming our kids.
Yeah. I mean, anxiety and depression are the graphs that are going up, I think, most alarmingly. And I don't want my kids on those graphs. I mean, I want my kids on the other end, other end of those graphs.
You want them to be well. You want them to be healthy and well.
Oh, absolutely. And agency is so important in learning too. I know I'm a teacher by trade, and so that was something that I did as a senior thesis, was what is the role of agency in learning to read?
Wow.
It's huge.
Will you send me your thesis? I'd love to read that.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can find it.
Oh my gosh.
It was on a computer.
Where are you from? You sound like you're from the Midwest all of a sudden.
I am. I'm a Michigander.
I can hear it in your voice. I used to be from Wisconsin.
Nice. Yes,
and when you just said to all of Katie's listeners, when she just said, oh my gosh, I heard it. It's so great.
Yep. I grew up in Northern Michigan, so I have a little bit of a Canadian accent every so often.
Yeah. It's adorable.
That's too funny. So, I mean, on this theme of agency, though, Julie, you suggest parents follow 4 steps for teaching a child a skill. And these are like the simplest things ever. Yes. Walk us through your 4 steps.
Yes. So shout out to my friend Stacey Ashland here in Palo Alto, who gave me all of this good information. She's raising 2 kids, one with special needs and one developing typically. And she taught me this method. First, you do it for them. Then you do it with them. Then you watch them do it. And then they can do it completely independently. Picture teaching your kid to cross the street, teaching your kid to use the stove, teaching your kid to take the commuter train. First you do it for them. They might be in your arms, you're holding them, or they're just off to the side as you take care of it, whatever it is.
Right.
Next, you do it with them. You're narrating out loud. You're in teaching mode. You're explaining with your language and with your behaviors how it happens, and you're trying to engage them and paying attention and being interested. Step 3 is you swap roles. They're now the ones thinking it out loud. You're still there in case some disaster is going to befall them. You practice steps 2 and steps 3 enough times, you can move to step 4, which is the kid can do it on their own. One day our kid has to be able to use that stove, and you're thinking, but the stove is hot. And my answer to you is yes. And do you want your kid to be 17 when they're first allowed to touch the stove? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So your kid might have to get a little bit of an ouch finger to learn you can't be that near the stove. Now you're there to make sure they don't set their hair on fire. That's the outcome you're supposed to prevent. But a little hurt here and there teaches the kid, oh, that's hot. Oh, I shouldn't stand that close to, this car that's coming, right? I need to stand farther back. You're there to teach them back up until they can, they've had enough experience where you can have confidence. Okay, now they can make that good judgment for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I have an awesome interview with Jessica Leahy, the author of The Gift of Failure, talking about how we learn through failure. I know you know her, because this is a good connection here. Now it's those steps do kind of seem obvious. Like once you say them, parents are going, well, yeah, we get that, but why have we gotten to the point where you have to teach us this? Deconstruct what happened here? Isn't
that a good question? Because it does seem really obvious, and I think for millennia it was obvious, and then. There were 5 things that happened in the 80s that really conspired to change childhood and kind of launch this concept of helicopter parenting. In no particular order, the Playdate was born in 1984, and not coincidentally, the first students to come to college en masse with parents who couldn't let go were the first kids to be subjected to the play date. The 1984 5-year-olds became the 1998, 99 college freshmen.
Which is
parents.
me, but in Northern Michigan, everything gets there later.
Right?
So
I
was
love that.
saved.
That's a trend you want to stave off, Northern Michigan. All right. So the play date was born in 84. The self-esteem movement was born here in California in the early 80s, spread across the country. This is the whole give them a trophy just for being on the soccer team, ribbons and trophies, certificates and awards just for showing up, not for being good. Okay.
I can't even.
Stranger Danger was born in 1983, a made-for-TV movie watched by more households than watched almost any other television show in American history about a child abduction. We became safer in cars and on bicycles with every single state passing laws that you had to wear a bike helmet, a seatbelt, or have a car seat in the car for children. Those laws went into effect through the mid-'80s in every single state. And then finally, a book was published called A Nation at Risk, which said American teenagers weren't doing very well academically compared to their international counterparts. And so we needed in America to do more testing and more teaching to the test. And so in the aggregate, all of those things led to parents watching over playgrounds, sidewalks, malls, grocery stores, sidelines of kids' activities, homework, just there, hovering, making sure, applauding, handling, fixing, all of that. And observing those trends, some researchers whose names are eluding me right now, they're in my book, I want to say Klein and Foster, coined the term helicopter parent. And so that's how we got here in the 80s. Baby boomer parents, parenting millennials. Really ironic because the baby boomers insisted that they have a voice. When they were young, when they were teenagers and young adults, they were in the streets protesting for civil rights and women's rights and the Vietnam War. They were demanding that they had the right to be heard. They were questioning authority. That was one of their mantras. And this is the irony. They went on to question authority on behalf of their children. They're so interested in like handling it. They've deprived their own children of having a voice. It's this terrible, beautiful irony. So that's how we got here. And we have to step back and remember our biological imperative. We are mammals, just like that dog down the street and that elephant over, on the continent of Africa or your local zoo. We are mammals, and we're supposed to raise our offspring to be able to fend without us, because like it or not, you'll be dead one day, people. Got to accept that fact. We'll be dead and gone. And it's a parenting win when we can say, with confidence, my son or daughter, my child, my offspring can survive without me. Not when they're 5, but 18 used to be the age. Now, I don't know, 25, 29, pick an age. But at some point, our offspring have to be able to fend. And fend isn't go get a Tesla or go get a $100,000 a year job. It's wake yourself up, track your belongings, your obligations, your stuff, clean yourself, feed yourself, have a job that pays your bills, and be in community with other humans. I mean, those are the basic things that our young are going to be able to have to do for themselves. And we, with our overparenting, are depriving them of being competent across all of those arenas.
Absolutely. It sounds like we're focusing on step 27, getting into a good college, and forgetting steps 1 through 20, like behave and grow up and feed yourself.
That's beautifully put. Yep.
And we have to remember, and I love your straight talk to parents, you're like getting in the camera. But we have to remember that, yes, maybe 18 is the goal, but it does start at 5.
I think it starts at 1.
There has to be a gradual.
Yeah. No, it's totally
go.
gradual. No, it's totally gradual. And before I go any farther, since you said I was like getting in the camera talking to parents, I want everyone to know I am a helicopter parent. Okay. I wrote a book telling other parents what to do because of what I was seeing on my campus. And it was like what I was seeing, because I was working with other people's kids on a college campus. It's like I was seeing the future in other people's kids because my own kids were little. And I realized, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I see some students on my campus who are independent and autonomous and accountable and can make their own decisions. I see these other kids who are just constantly asking their parents for help. I want my kids to be like these, not these. What do I do? And I came home and realized one day I came home for dinner and I leaned over my 10-year-old's plate and I began cutting his meat. Ooh. And that was my aha moment. Like, oh no, I'm going to raise my kids to be like these guys whose parents have to do everything for them in college, instead of like these kids who are capable.
Cutting their own meat.
Cutting, right? You shouldn't be cutting a 10-year-old's meat. And I know some of your listeners are like, oh no, I'm cutting my 11-year-old's meat. Yeah, stop that. And you're thinking the knives are sharp. And I'm going to say back to you, like, yeah, don't start with the sharpest knives. Just start with, plastic knives if you have to. Like
P.S. We teach kids to use knives.
Could be like plastic knives. So the 7-year-old can use some real knives. And, and then maybe the 10-year-old is using the sharp knives. Okay, so that was my aha moment. So I am complicit in it myself. And I have to admit that. And now, of course, I've forgotten the question I was supposed to be answering. So
you didn't. You made up your own question. So it's okay.
Okay.
You said, give me a minute. I got to say something. So you didn't forget anything.
I know, but then you did ask me something else. I can't remember what it was.
That's okay. No, I mean, that's totally, I love that you've gone to the stove already and you've gone to knives. And I don't know if that was purposeful, but that's kind of like my mission in this world is let's get kids at the stove. Let's get it. My 7-year-old does use a sharp knife totally already. He did at age 6. Good. And that's what we teach parents to do is like, how do we give in? How do we teach them safe skills?
Right.
And then let go.
I know what you were saying. At what age? And you said 5 and I said 1. Yeah. And here's why I said 1. I'm going to posit this. The minute they learn to walk, which is roughly around age 1, they're walking away from us. And we're supposed to delight in the fact that they're growing skills. So first of all, we don't overhelp them when they're learning to walk. We don't put our hands underneath their armpits and hold them as they try to walk, because that would be using our strength to stand them up. That would not strengthen their bodies or help them with their balance. So we know not to do that. We don't yell at them, get back up. We're walkers in this family. We know that falling is an inherent part of the process of learning to stand and learning to put one foot in front of the other. And if we can hold that visual image in our minds for every single task and skill our kids have to master and learn, that will be the best reminder. So here's the point. I said the minute they learn to walk, they're walking away. We're supposed to be there to make sure they don't walk into traffic or off a cliff or into the ocean before they can swim, right? But everything short of those life or death examples, we're supposed to sort of like, okay, let's see what happened. Let's see what, let's see where they go. Let's see what they learn from this, right? Okay, we're supposed to prevent them from dying. Yeah. And short of that, we're supposed to allow them to live. Let them live. Let them explore, discover, use their hands, use their brains, use their feet, use their curiosity. That's how a human grows. And we are impeding their development by always needing to stop things from happening or protect things or handle and fix and so on.
I think the culture, I feel like the culture makes it difficult because there's comparisonitis, right? We're comparing our kids to other people's kids. There's a lot of layers in culture that are making this really tricky for parents. If you could like wave a magic wand over the whole culture, what would be like the first thing you would tweak or cut out?
Well, I think comparing ourselves with each other is a real sickness that lives in our minds as parents. So if we could get our own selves some therapy, we'd probably be able to get a life, and then our kids could have a life too. So I think parents really getting right with themselves and with their own psyche is really step number 1. But we have to turn the language around. So when somebody says to me, oh, I can't believe you let her take the Caltrain. Your 12-year-old daughter going to take a train up to San Francisco for a camp. I shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed. This person is trying to imply with their language that I'm neglecting my daughter. Oh, I would never. I can't believe you let her. We have to turn that language around and say, are you kidding me? I want her to learn to take the Caltrain and the bus and the subway and etc. I want my daughter to have those skills. I had those skills when I was her age. Why would I want anything less for my child? I want her to be strong and thrive out there. She needs to know how to take public transportation. In other words, claim it as empowering your kid instead of allowing those others to sort of judge you with this sort of dangling the implication of neglect in front of you.
Yes, I love that. Claim it. Just claim it.
Like you just said, like your 7-year-old uses sharp knives, right? You should be talking about that. Look what my kid can do. In my book, I point to some examples. I think it's in Switzerland, I want to say. They take kindergartners out for an overnight where they roast hot dogs over an open flame and use saws to cut wood as 5-year-olds. And that would make most American parents scream. or call the authorities. That's,
they would call and they would protect.
And those kindergartners are so much more competent than ours. Can you imagine ours compared to those? Like if you put them in I don't know, in a field together or in a backyard or in a kitchen, their little kindergartner would be all bustling around and making stuff happen, and ours would be sitting there waiting for some adult to hand them a fork.
Yeah, or looking for the phone to call their mom.
Right, exactly. Yeah, calling your parent is not a life skill. I mean, it's sort of a life skill if there's an emergency and like I can use this device to get help, right? But it shouldn't be the go-to resource to handle the run-of-the-mill stuff of life.
Yeah.
Do you know that many teenagers, I'm going to demonstrate because we're on video. I've been drinking out of this bottle of sparkling water, and I've got a screw cap here. And what I've heard anecdotally from so many people is that teenagers can't unscrew a juice drink or sparkling water. Why? They don't have the strength. Why? Why do you think? Some adult has always unscrewed the cap for them.
Dude, evolution's going to kill us
our children into veal. Our children are going to be like grown up chronologically, grown bodies, and totally incapacitated because we have overhelped them.
Oh my goodness. Now, Julie, I have to say, anecdotally, in my own life, I have 4 kids. And compared to families with 2, like to survive, we have had to let them do more, even if we maybe had a tendency toward helicopter. Do you think, because I think that is a trend that has gone way down since, say, the 50s or 60s. Do you think that has anything to do with this?
I love it. Yes. Have more kids and you won't be able to overparent them. I think that's got to have, look, I am not a researcher. I'm a lawyer turned university dean turned writer, but I have read a lot of other people's research and scholarship on this subject. And a number of times I've read the assertion that both because we have fewer kids and because we're having kids later, which often requires some medical intervention, so effort, petri dishes and injections and timing and all of that, right? We've put so much effort into them, into creating them. Why would we stop hovering over them once they are out of our bodies the way we hovered over them, when they were embryos and zygotes and sperm and whatnot, right? So
there's
if you're tracking every little aspect of their creation, how are you going to stop once you actually have the child? So this has led to, like, we have to have a video monitor on the child all the time while they're sleeping. We have to measure what they're, eating and what they're pooing and peeing out. And we have to, everything has to be managed. And it leads to this climate of incredible fear. I mean, parents are so afraid, like, if I'm not tracking everything, I'm a bad parent. And I'm here to say, like, back off. Slow down. Nobody wants their poop measured. Okay? Like, just stop. Unless your kid has some illness where you need to know, like, what is coming out of their body, and you need to measure it for some doctor, like, stop. Okay? These are not lab rats.
Yeah.
Conversely, you might be turning them into one, because if you're monitoring every single moment, and then that becomes GPS tracking them wherever they go, and you have to know where they are, and then you're going to basically check that online portal your school gives you where you can see the grades every hour of every day. You're effectively treating your child like an inmate in a maximum security prison. Those are the other people that are constantly surveilled, like your child. I'm confident, again, not a psychologist, but I'm confident in 10 to 15 years, the psychological community will publish data showing us the harm that accrues to a human who has been surveilled their entire life.
Ooh, I'm with you on that one. I totally agree. Now, I'd say one of the early charts that we start filling out, though, is those chore charts. So let's talk about that C word.
Those are better charts.
There's some managing there, but let's talk about chores in the best way.
So the longest longitudinal study of humans ever conducted, which has been underway for decades, has thrown off thousands of findings. And I talk about this in my TED Talk for people who want more. Showed us that people who are professionally successful in life turn out to have done chores as children or held a part-time job in high school. And that boils down to the fact that chores build a work ethic. When you have an expectation that your offspring will do X, Y, and Z, and you hold them accountable, they learn to pitch in, to roll up their sleeves, to be useful, to help out, to not sit around and expect to be waited on or served. They learn they have to do the unpleasant tasks in life that everybody does. And that's the kind of mindset that will advance them in the workplace. Too many young adults in the workplace are sitting around just waiting for their boss to tell them what to do instead of anticipating, oh, I see a problem over there. Let me go see if I can help. Oh, I see a mess over there. Let me see if I can clean it up. Oh, let me think a few steps ahead to what is going to be needed next in this meeting, on this project, whatever it is. It helps develop that attitude that's going to be so valued in the workplace. So chores matter. Even if you can afford to have people clean your house every single day, if you do that and don't expect your child to lift a finger, you're depriving them of developing a work ethic at home, which is going to serve them well in the workplace.
Absolutely. Even though it's harder to get started, because this is like, now we're in my realm here. Like, I'm the one who's telling parents, like, yes, it's a little harder at first to teach your kids to cook. You have to psychologically get over yourself and let them make messes and let them slow you down. But it's so worth it. I mean, we kind of have to shout that from the rooftops, like, yes, a little bit harder at first. There's an investment, but there is an ROI forever.
Well, let me try to make an obvious point, which, again, everything that I'm saying is obvious, right? It's just we've totally lost our minds these days, so it's no longer obvious. Of course, you can stack the dishwasher more efficiently than your child. Of course, you can do algebra homework more accurately than your child. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you're the grown-up. You've taken algebra. You've stacked the dishwasher for 40 years. Okay, duh. Of course you can do it better. You're the grown-up. We're supposed to be teaching our kids. And that means we can't be so invested in the outcome being perfect today that we fail to let them try it themselves. Okay? So create the expectation that your kid, I'm pointing to my kitchen, that your kid unload the dishwasher, okay? Or load it. Let's say load it. And, you want to come along and say, like, actually, I like it when the forks are this way and the plates go here. Like, stop. Just let them get the stuff in the dishwasher. And then when you're unloading it the next day or they're going to do it the next day, you can say with a lesson, hey, I noticed last time you loaded it like this. Let me show you a trick for how you put the forks in so that the food doesn't stick in the tines. Okay, you don't have to micromanage it in the moment they're doing it. You can give them feedback the next time they're about to do it. And don't pile all the feedback on, like, Andy did the plates wrong, Andy did the cups wrong, and stop. Because they're just going to be like, why don't you just do it, Mom? You can be like, yeah, okay, let me, right? Then you're lost, right? A little bit of feedback, and they're going to get better and better each time. And that's how they become freestanding adults who can fend for themselves. One skill at a time.
Absolutely. And to go back to Jessica Leahy, let them fail. Give them the fork and say, man, why do you think this is still dirty? Although in my house, we call it the dirty machine. Like, it doesn't matter how you load it, we have issues. But in most houses, you say, oh, like, this is dirty. Why? Help them think. It is harder. It's harder because our brains are very tired. And I get that. And the kids aren't going to be like, oh, yes, mother, why don't you teach me something really helpful to me today? They're going to whine. They're going to complain. That's their job. But we don't want to teach them to be whiners and complainers by giving, by letting them get away with that.
Right. Yeah. We're supposed to praise them when they do something right. So instead of harping on them for their bad attitude about the chore, when you catch them doing something right, like they did their chore without too much grumbling, you just look at them and smile and say, thanks, I appreciate it, with a smile, and move on. You don't have to overpraise them. Oh my God, that was the most amazing recycling job anyone has ever done. Like, don't go in that overpraise direction, but just a smile, eye contact, and a thank you, and keep going. And they will crave that attention from you.
Absolutely. So let's get practical, because I have 2 kids who walk to school, and a bunch of other kids from our neighborhood do too in September and October. And then everybody stops because it gets a little dark and it gets a little cold. So I want you to tell parents who drive their kids to school when they could walk or take the bus your advice.
Girl, I'm in California. We don't get snow here. We had years of drought. We didn't have any raindrops. Now we have had rain this year, but people drive their cars on the sunniest days. You would just cringe. Okay. Kids should walk or bike to school. Starting at what age? I don't know, because nowadays, let's face it, you can get arrested if you let your kid walk to school and some good Samaritan neighbor, quote unquote, good Samaritan neighbor, decides your kid looks too young to be walking
Even
and
though it's
calls
safer.
the police.
Statistically, it's just as safer as ever.
No, it's safer than before. Safer than when you were little. Safer than when I was little. According to the FBI, all humans are safer. Violent crime is down, not because of helicopter parents. Okay, violent crime against all aged humans is down, way down. Okay, so the Good Samaritans are really the problems. The ones saying that child looks too young to be in the front yard, on the sidewalk, at the playground. They're calling the police. The community has to address this. We have to reclaim sidewalks and playgrounds and front yards and play for children. I want to really urge people to get law enforcement and local schools and parents in a dialogue about how old is old enough for a child to walk freely in our town, and can't we all get behind the value of that? And in some towns it might be 7, and some it might be 9, but it sure as heck shouldn't be 12. That's way too old. It should be younger than that. There's a great, I want to put in a plug for the Wilton, Connecticut school district, where the superintendent has created a task force on free play. They're bringing free play back to Wilton, Connecticut. It's sort of oxymoronic, right? I have to create a task force to bring back free play, but that's the extent of things. And so they're working with law enforcement and parents and educators and mental health people and everybody to figure out, all right, how can we bring back block parties? How can kids just play freely with one another? And all of this implies freedom of movement, right? Not this tightly controlled, enriched environment where everyone's driven everywhere to make their lives better for some college, but rather like humans interacting with humans, downtime, enjoyment, relaxation, laughter, food, music, games. We're really trying to restore some of these fundamental tenets that make childhood a healthy childhood versus an unhealthy childhood. So check out that task force on free play if you're a community that is ready to make the leap.
Awesome. I love that. I think it was probably after reading your book about the stranger danger being one of those, 5 impetuses for this whole problem. And I thought, sometimes I succumb to that because I have kids who like to say, hi to everyone. And, sometimes I'll like tamp them down. And like, I made a commitment right there that we're going to teach our kids that it's okay to talk to anyone,
because if you don't get in the car, right? But don't talk to strangers isn't a life skill. Because when they leave our homes, their lives are full of strangers. And then they're afraid to talk to the strangers who are their dorm mates, professors, administrators, co-workers, like fellow humans in life. They've never had that practice. They don't know how to make eye contact. They don't know how to be respectful. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They think it's creepy if someone's talking to them. And this is undercutting their ability to thrive in the world with other humans. So how to discern the one creepy stranger from the vast majority of humans who are perfectly fine, that's the skill. And they learn it by watching us interact with strangers, by listening to what we say and how we behave and feeling our body language when we're like, oh, that person looks and sounds a little sketchy over there. Let's steer clear. And of course, hopefully we're not passing on our racism when we're having these thoughts go through. There are a lot of judgments that parents make that are really unfortunate and overblown because of our own biases and fears.
I think we assume a lot of people are bad before good. I saw a thread on Facebook the other day, like, my 13-year-old or 14-year-old male neighbor offered to watch my 5-year-old if we ever needed it. And the thread just blew up like, oh, no, never. And I'm thinking, is this genderism? Is it, why are we so afraid of a kid? Let's have some more constructive conversation. That just blew my mind. And parents and adults too, like they talk. I've noticed that if it's me and one of my kids and another adult, but it's about the child, they'll try to talk to me, and I'm like purposefully step back and try to say with my body language, like, please talk to my child. They're competent, Or
how about when you ask a child something and the parent answers? And this happens to me all the time. And I redirect my eye contact. And this happened at the college level, but it also happens to me when I'm talking to an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old. And not a stranger. I'm not like the weird stranger on the street that's trying to talk to this child. It's like someone I know, So I say to the child, hey, how's life? What's good in life these days? And the parent will jump in and say, oh, she's on the soccer team, or oh, he's just and I'm like,
we're on the soccer team.
Say, like, shut up! I'm talking to your child. I don't say that because it's so awkward, but I just smile and I redirect my eye contact to the child and say, tell me more about that. Trying to signal to the parent, like, what are you so afraid of? Stop talking for your child. Let them hear their own voice.
Awesome.
Let them have their own thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we as a culture,
I'm not passionate about this. Oh my God.
I know. Those of us who get this, like, we have to force ourselves to change our language and to change our body language, right? And just like be really focused about it. Let's talk kitchens for a minute, because here at Kids Cook Real Food, I mean, I've mentioned our mission. We really try to build connection, confidence for kids, and creativity in families in the kitchen. And so I'm often finding myself having to challenge parents to like raise their expectations on what their kids can actually do. And I'd love to hear your wisdom. I know you're a mom of 2 teenagers, and you've spoken with thousands of other parents and their teenagers trying to become young adults. What's the benefit of teaching kids to cook?
Food is life. Food is literally sustenance for our bodies and our minds. It's also a way to be in community with other humans. Wherever you go on the planet, humans are preparing food and eating food with one another. And so from physiologically nourishing to existentially, soulfully connecting with one another, food is essential. So then we get to issues of healthy food and healthy portions and this, and there's all the nutrition science around, what's really good for us, and teaching kids how to make food as opposed to just buying food at some convenience store or fast food restaurant is really important for their health. And it's also great to have helpers at home, to know that you can say to your tween, could you start the peas? I need you to stick them in the microwave with some, like giving them some instructions to help get dinner started, really helps the family. So there's just, it's sort of like the obvious place to start. I was just visiting a wonderful family in Los Angeles. They're doing a documentary on these issues, and they have a 16-month-old, and they have one of these like wooden towers, Kitchen Helper it's called, is the brand, I guess. And he goes in there, and that puts him at the right height for the counter where he can, chop things and spoon things and whatnot. And he loves that little Kitchen Helper so much, he tries to drag it to other parts of the house. It's like he knows this Kitchen Helper device allows me to do things, so I want to take it to other places.
Yeah, it's like his agency creator.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Aw, that's so great. That's so great. Julie, you mentioned racism, and I have to get into this just a little bit, even though it's a totally different topic, because your second book, Real American, is about your experience of racism, and I'm just going to kind of be bare and go into the confessional here. When I was reading in your bio your experience of racism, I was like, wait, what? Because I completely had assumed you were a white person because I'm a white person. And I'm so I had to do like the internal brain slap, like, Katie, you naughty girl, I can't believe you thought that. So, that's like my own me-centrism. I know, I love it.
My black hair, folks. Yeah, I'm very light-skinned, but I'm a biracial black person. My father was African-American. My mother is white and British. And I didn't kind of get the half and half. My dad is a lot darker than me. But yeah, I wrote this book I'm 51, and at about age 49, I published this book, Real American, on what it was like to grow up black and biracial in mostly white spaces. My parents raised me in mostly white towns where I was the recipient of what we call microaggressions, those tiny little things that are mean and hurtful and unkind or ignorant but unintended or what have you, that we're always told, oh, get over it, or oh, that didn't happen, or oh, give them the benefit of the doubt. And we're told our feelings don't matter. These things hurt over time. I mean, I went to a brand name college, a brand name law school. I was a corporate lawyer. I was a university dean. And, up to the present moment, I still encounter people with really ignorant attitudes about Black and brown people in this country, and sometimes they'll direct them toward me. And so I wrote that book to try to create awareness. Actually, I wrote it to be in solidarity with people who have experienced those things, and then beyond them, to people who've experienced discrimination or bias for other reasons beyond race. And then beyond that, I think I wrote it for anyone willing to kind of open their eyes and slap themselves in the face, like you just said, and like become more aware of the experience of others and maybe have some compassion. And then because I'm so relatively privileged, I'm socioeconomically privileged, I have light skin, I'm highly educated, you know, what I have experienced or been subjected to as a, given all those privileges, is far, far less than that. It's like the tiny little tip of the iceberg compared to what the vast majority of African Americans and other Black and brown people experience in this country. So if you can have a tiny bit of compassion for me based on my story, maybe you can have a whole lot more compassion for people whose lives are such that they encounter far worse.
Yeah, and as parents, I mean, let's flip this and say, let's spend that time that we were going to use managing the kids' homework and expose them to the way others outside of our own experience live and feel and experience the world, you know, to make sure that we raise more empathetic children, not just more successful children.
Right, absolutely. Particularly in this 21st century, which is a global century, our children will benefit the more they are comfortable interacting with people that don't look like them or sound like them, that come from different walks of life. And a great way to build empathy is to have children's books that are filled with faces of kids that look different from your kid. You, at the adult level, you can read memoirs like mine, or you can read other people's memoirs or novels. You can go watch movies. You can listen to different podcasts to educate yourself, to inform yourself about the lives of people not like you. And I think that's something we should all be doing.
Most absolutely. And then you have a book that you're working on, right? And this is for young adults on how to be an adult. Are we allowed to get like a little peek into that? What you're going to tell kids, adults?
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing that book, meant to be a sequel to How to Raise an Adult, called How to Be an Adult, which I hope will be received as a compassionate offering to millennials and Generation Z coming up behind them, our current 0 to 18-year-olds, and about this concept of adulting, which millennials have turned into a verb. Have to go to the DMV, hashtag adulting, have to pay my taxes, hashtag adulting, as if adulting is not their set state, but rather some place they have to go to, or a set of tasks they have to go off and do, and then they come back to wherever they feel more comfortable. And I hope this book will be an invitation to see that adulting is actually awesome, to use a Gen X term. It's awesome. It's amazing to be your own person and not on someone else's leash, being handled and managed and directed by other people. And yeah, it's terrifying at times. And with that terror comes exhilaration. Like, I'm in charge of myself and I will make stuff happen for myself. And that is actually delicious and wonderful. I joke that so many millennials have quote unquote failed to launch, as the media likes to say, because we have made adulthood look so very unattractive, because all we do is worry about children and stress about every little thing. So this is sort of, I hope, an invitation for so many of us to kind of reclaim the joy of adulting, of adulthood. We're going to need millennials and Gen X to have their adulting act together, because we're going to need them to look after us when we're old, right? So we need them to kind of, come on, you can do it, right? For their sake, but also for ours.
Well, I love this. I wish we could just hang out. You could come to Michigan. You could experience, literally, we have snow on the ground. When we're recording this, you guys, it is April. It is tax day, and it snowed like 3 inches yesterday. I'm not kidding.
Oh
we were
gosh.
like,
oh my gosh,
it looks a lot like Christmas, and we hate it. So yeah, come experience some stressors with us.
I moved to California for a reason. Now I'm a total weather wimp. I'll come visit you maybe in June.
I believe it. Well, I would love to talk to you.
Of no snow, right?
That's right. I'll talk to you all day long, but we're out of time.
I love this.
So we gotta end with the super practical step. I love to leave parents with, like, what's the one thing they can do today to take a step toward letting go of helicopter parenting, toward raising actual adults who know what they're doing when they leave our homes.
I have so many practical steps. So you'll point people to my website, which has like 4, 3, 2, 1 steps. I'm just trying to figure out which one to pick. I think I'm going to pick this. The 1-week cleanse. If you're this is not really in the kitchen space or like the practical skill, it's more like the academic pressure.
Yeah.
if you're the sort of parent who doesn't feel okay unless you know what happened on the science test today, how much homework they have, when are they starting their homework, did they finish their, all of that, that you might want to like assault your kid with at the door when they come home from school, try the 1 week cleanse, because this really makes our kids feel that they only matter to us when they've done their homework and when they got an A on the test. Okay. So you say to your kid, hey kid, I know I'm always on you about how much homework you have and what happened on the test today. And I know that can make you feel that I think you don't care, but I know you do care. So for 1 week, I'm going to button my lip and I'm not going to ask you these questions. Okay. What happens is, parents tell me that now there's more laughter in the home because parents and children are interacting about everything else in life besides the academic transactional things. Kids, as Jessica Leahy will tell you, when you give them the autonomy to care about it themselves instead of acting like you're the one that has to care, in other words, you back your energy off, it gives room for your child to come forward, step forward and care about the things you want them to care about in their own life. So it's just a reset, the 1 week cleanse. Give it a try.
Awesome. And now we have a lot of families in our audience who are homeschooling. It's a little bit different, but there's got to be, I mean, there's an application there too. Like
Absolutely.
even if it's a couple hours in the day, I'm not going to ask you what you're doing for a couple hours and then tomorrow we can,
or I think,
you're their teacher.
I'm your teacher tomorrow, but right now I'm your parent and I'm not going to ask you about homework. We're not, school's over. It's not like school is 24/7 when you're a homeschooler, right? Yeah. Kids are supposed to have downtime and time to figure out what they want to do in the afternoon and all that. So yeah, it definitely applies to homeschoolers as well.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Julie.
Absolutely.
Fabulous.
It was a joy. And I really appreciate your bringing up your thoughts about Real America in my other book. I really appreciated that piece of the conversation and I loved the entire conversation. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Kids Cook Real Food listeners, we will be back next week with another expert who may not get as close to her camera as Julie Lythcott-Haims, but nonetheless will still be fascinating and will have information you need to raise healthy and independent children. See you next time.